From Tampa, U.S. Olympian and award-winning skeet shooter, Danya Vizzi is here with us. Thank you, Danya. And George Warthen, Chief Conservation Officer for the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. And I think we got some local dignitaries as well, so I want to thank everybody for being here. So we're in Hillsborough County, eastern part of Hillsborough County. So do we have people, are they happy that USF beat UF, or are they not? Because, you know, in this area it could be either one, so you're happy about it. Okay, you're happy about it. You know, it's like the teams, like you got USF Florida, and obviously that was big win for USF. I know the Gator fans are very disappointed. Then you've got USF playing Miami this weekend, and then you'll have Florida play Miami, and then beginning of October, Miami play Florida State. So they all kind of beat up on each other, I guess, in this beginning part of the season. But I will say, I mean, I think USF looks good. They've had two ranked teams that they have beaten to start the season. Who knows what will happen with Miami? And I know in Tallahassee, people are very happy that the Seminoles are starting good after last year. So we'll see. And then it was interesting at the end yesterday, but look, I'm a Bucs fan, so I was really happy that they beat the Falcons to start the season, and you know, you want to have a good hope going forward with everything. So we're here to launch something that I think is really significant. It's really going to be meaningful for a lot of people. But before I get into the details of our Second Amendment tax holiday, I think it's important to just put in perspective where we are as a state in terms of all the different things that have been accomplished, but also our fiscal and budget situation. So, and you've heard me say, anyone that's ever come to any of our events, we have been ranked #1 economy in all 50 states for 3 years in a row by CNBC. We have a AAA credit rating from all major ratings agencies, much different than some other states and certainly the federal government. #1 in education freedom, #1 talent development, #1 entrepreneurship, #1 for public higher education, #1 for net in-migration, #1 for new business formations, #1 GDP economic growth amongst all large states. Unemployment rate has been lower than the national average for over 57 straight months. And of course, we continue to see more investment come in to the free state of Florida. We have no income tax, but even apart from not having an income tax, we have one of the lowest state tax burdens per capita in the United States by far. And you look at our fiscal situation, we've run big budget surpluses. Really, I mean, you know, when COVID hit, everyone thought it was going to be, you know, so difficult because they thought people wouldn't come to Florida and all this, the tourism. And the reality was, because we were open, because we were leading on all those issues, we really benefited. We had a lot of people come and visit. People did move. And you've seen really the economy do very, very well, but the budget do very well. Even though we're cutting taxes every year, you know, we get more revenue coming in to the coffers. So if you look at the entire history of the state of Florida from the 1840s till the present, and you added up all the state taxpayer-supported state debt, we will have, by the end of this fiscal year, just since I've been governor, paid off almost 50% of that. And that's the entire history of Florida. So that's a big deal. We have the lowest per capita debt of any state in America that has any debt. And, you know, you look, the debt goes up in a lot of other places, including nationally. That debt per capita and net debt is going down. If you looked at what would your share be of the current Florida state debt would be, if every Floridian just had to cut a check, it'd be about $450, which, you know, you wouldn't want to do. But, I mean, if that ever happened, you could do it. Most people could do it. Federal debt, if you just had to cut a check, every American citizen, to pay for the entire federal debt, it's $106,000 per American to extinguish that. Very few people would be able to do that. And so ours is declining. It's obviously very manageable. We're going to keep doing it because I think it's important. And we worked with the legislature to continue our accelerated debt repayment program. You know, they can get these bonds on the open market, buy them for a discount, retire them, And so you're saving money on interest costs by retiring the debt early. So they've done a really good job. Our guys who work in bond finance have done a good job. So we're proud of that. We're happy about that. We've run big budget surpluses, but honestly, it's like you don't want to be in deficit, of course, but there is a limit to how much surplus you want. I mean, you don't want to be, even though we're lowering taxes, it's still, if you're getting all this revenue, put that money back into the economy, and we've done that through tax relief. And so this past year, we did about $2 billion in tax relief for Florida families and businesses. We've done almost $10 billion since I've been governor in tax relief, and those are numbers that had never been approached prior to our administration. If you look at what we just did in this current fiscal year, $1.5 billion to eliminate the business rent tax. We were the only state in the country that had that tax. It was anti-economic growth. It didn't make sense, and so we eliminated that. We've also done things that I think are going to be good for Floridians by taking things like back-to-school sales tax holidays, disaster response disaster preparedness holidays, and making those holidays permanent so people know that that's going to be there. Actually, the disaster supplies are just permanently tax-free regardless. So if you want to start doing your hurricane prep for next year in January, you can do it. That's up to you. You're still going to get the benefit. You don't have to wait till those periods. Incidentally, it's not been very busy lately out there. We're watching, of course. We are basically arriving at what would typically be considered peak season. I mean, once you get in kind of that middle of September into the third and fourth week, that is the most frequent tropical activity historically. So things look, knock on wood, look good now. But what I tell people is you can have a very, very inactive season, but then it could just take one to make, a really catastrophic impact. And so we watch, we monitor. Things right at this moment look good, but we are in the peak where these things start to develop. So we'll continue to do that. All just being said is there's not an imminent storm on the horizon, but if you haven't made prep, we could get one. And so take advantage of that tax-free and really get it done. We've also done things like tax holidays for event tickets, state park admissions, life jackets, sunscreen, bike helmets, other things. We want people to be able to enjoy the outdoors. We think it's really, really important. So that brings us here today. So one of the things we were looking at when we did our budget last year was what can we do to provide meaningful relief to people? The big kahuna that we're working on is the property taxes. And that is not something that you can just do through the legislature with normal legislation, the way Florida's Constitution is set out. It actually requires to put the question on the ballot, and the people need to vote it in. And so we're working on that, and I think that I don't think these legislators will be able to leave town without giving you an ability to vote yourself some meaningful relief. And for me, I think the basic is, if you're a Florida resident and you have a primary residence here, a homesteaded residence, you ought to be able to own that free and clear of the government. The notion that you should be just paying rent to them indefinitely, people have been pinched by these property taxes. We have an ability as a state with tourism and other things and snowbirds and all this to be able for our local governments to have the adequate amount of revenue. But we've also been highlighting some of these local governments that have been increasing budgets dramatically recently, because what's happened is home values go up, and that means they assess your properties higher, and you get more tax revenue pouring into local governments. And there have been some that have returned that to the taxpayers, but you've got others. I mean, Broward, they haven't even had a net population increase. Their budget's up like 60% in the last 4 years. And so the question is, do you need that type of increase, or would it be better to give the property tax relief? So that is ultimately, I think, what people want. I think it's the best way for us as elected officials to help facilitate meaningful relief for people. We've lived through a really tough period of inflation, prices at the grocery store, all these other things. As states, certainly, we can't control the overall economic situation in terms of prices nationally. We're affected by that. The one thing that we can control is the tax. And so if we can do this, I think that's going to be a breath of fresh air, a sigh of relief for so many people. So stay tuned. We're going to push for that. So that's the big kahuna. But then we're looking, okay, how else can we make a difference? You know, it's good to not have an income tax. You know, when you don't have an income tax, you can't just propose a rate cut, right? Because there's nothing to cut. It's done. So where can you do to make a difference? And one of the things that we wanted to do was show our commitment to folks who believe in the Second Amendment, who believe in exercising those constitutional rights, as well as our new constitutional protections for fishing and hunting that the voters enacted last year in the 2024 election and added that to Florida's Constitution. And in terms of Second Amendment, you know, we've made a lot of progress on this since I've been governor. I did sign legislation making Florida, joining now a majority of the 50 states for constitutional carry. You shouldn't need a permission slip to be able to exercise your rights. We also eliminated the ability for local governments to infringe on Second Amendment rights during a so-called state of emergency. Now, a lot of them have not tried this since I've been governor, but you know, we've had a couple pop up, and then I've had to come over the top rope with an executive order saying, no, you don't get to use a hurricane as a basis to go after somebody's Second Amendment rights. And that ain't happening here. So we're able to get that into law. So at this point, it's not even going to be able to be tried to begin with, even though I would have batted it down and would have done so proudly. I do think we also made sure, so we have constitutional carry. You know, the whole concealed carry license is not something that you need or is required in Florida, but they're still provided because some people want that for when they travel to other states. And in the Farm Bill, we were able to update those weapon license process to eliminate red tape and unnecessary bureaucratic delays. You know, that had been a massive backlog under Nikki Fried when she was commissioner, because she didn't believe in it, didn't believe in Second Amendment. And so I think Commissioner Wilton Simpson has done a good job of really working through that, and that's much better now for Floridians who need that. You know, I've been saying, though, we've got almost a 3-to-1 majority in the Florida House of Representatives. 38 states have open carry. It's not something that's controversial. The sky hasn't fallen in any of those. You know, why not pass that out of the Florida House of Representatives? And I've said for years that that'd be something that I would sign. Doesn't seem to get off the ground, even with all those Republicans all running, saying their Second Amendment, all banging their chests in the primaries, then get up to Tallahassee and not follow through. So I think they should just follow through, and I think they should do what they promised the voters they would do. But that brings us here today. So today, I'm proud to announce the beginning of our Second Amendment sales tax holiday, which will be no tax, no sales tax on the retail sale of firearms, ammunition, accoutrements, as well as items used for fishing or camping and other items used for hunting. And that is a big deal for a lot of people. This year's sales tax holiday will run from today, September 8th, until the end of the year, December 31st. And so this covers a lot of ground. As I mentioned, it covers ammunition. It covers bows and crossbows, as well as accessories. It covers firearms, including pistols, rifles, shotguns. It includes firearm accessories, holsters, grips, sights, stocks, cleaning kits, you name it, it's included. It also allows Floridians to save on supplies needed for other sportsman activities like camping and fishing. And it covers items, and there's usually a dollar limit to this as they go, but camping lanterns and flashlights, stoves, hammocks, change, sleeping bags, tents, bait and tackle, tackle bags and boxes, rod and reels. And so some of those, as I said, will have a limit to where you're tax-free, as the legislature did, but nevertheless, it allows you to save money. So you can find the full list of tax-free items online at floridarevenue.com/huntfishcamp. floridarevenue.com/huntfishcamp. And if you purchase guns or ammo during our Second Amendment holiday, we are inviting you to exercise your rights at one of FWC's public shooting sports ranges. So in addition to several of our state shooting sports ranges that are already free year-round, We are also announcing today that during this sales tax holiday, we will further commemorate our constitutional rights as we approach the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding by providing half-price range passes for various public ranges across the state. The dates and locations include Sunday, October 12th, Columbus Day, all ranges, all public ranges in Florida. Saturday, October 25th, and Saturday, December 6th at the Lakeland Range and at the Panama City Beach Range. Saturday, November 22nd, and Saturday, December 20th at the shooting range in St. Cloud and the Palm Beach County Shooting Sports Complex in West Palm Beach. Florida will also celebrate America's veterans and the freedom they have preserved for us by providing free range passes to all veterans at all ranges on Sunday, November 9th, in honor of Veterans Day. Finally, over the past 2 years, we've reduced the cost of our hunting and fishing licenses through promotions. That included the first year of our promotion, where we offered half-price lifetime and 5-year licenses, and last year's lifetime promotion for children's licenses. This year, in honor of America 250, we will be offering the usual $500 5-year gold sportsman's license for $250, cutting those costs in honor of the founding of the Republic and our constitutional right to keep and bear arms. Floridians from all walks of life have been able to enjoy our great natural resources. They want to continue to reduce costs for our families so that they can enjoy the great outdoors. I want to thank everybody that's been involved. We also just, I think as most people know, we have the record Gulf red snapper season that I authorized earlier this year, including they were there Memorial Day weekend, which was earlier than anticipated. That's going to be continuing throughout the end of the year, and they have those dates if you need those. We have requested that the federal government delegate to the state of Florida management over Atlantic red snapper. We've shown how it can be done in the Gulf. Atlantic red snapper, they give like 1 or 2 days of red snapper for the entire Atlantic coast of Florida, and they're using faulty data. You talk to the fishermen out there, there's fish. I mean, they're like all over, and that's the same thing they told us in the Gulf when I first became governor, and we're like, all right, well, let's do it right. And Rodney at FWC and those guys have done a great job. We're ready to be able to take on the Atlantic, and I would love to be able to open a really strong Atlantic red snapper season. I know that'd be a huge thing for so many people on the east coast of Florida. So this is an exciting day. It's an exciting time. I know there's going to be some of our residents that are probably going to save a pretty good chunk of change here, knowing how they stock up on some of this stuff. So enjoy it, and we're going to continue to work hard to support taxpayers. So we're going to bring up some of our speakers now. So I think a lot of people in Tampa know our Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins. He was a senator from nearby in a different part of Hillsborough County and did a great job in the Florida Senate. Really was actually the constitutional carry was his bill in the Florida Senate. Got a great record on the Second Amendment. Also was the guy he spearheaded our legislation that banned the purchase of farmland and other critical land by the Chinese Communist Party. We were the first, or one of the first states to do that. Now they're looking at doing that nationally, and then Senator Collins, now Lieutenant Governor Collins, was really leading the way on that. And then he's been really strong on school choice and really strong on law and order. And we take it for granted sometimes in Florida, but we are a law and order state. There are a lot of things that happen in other parts of this country that aren't permitted to happen here. And I remember, and I've mentioned this before, but there was a theft ring that CNN somehow interviewed like a year ago. They would steal all this stuff in New York City, but then when they'd get the proceeds, they would come down to Florida and they would hang out and they would do stuff here, and then they go back to New York and steal more. And the reporter's like, well, if you're going to spend it in Florida, why do you go back up to New York? Why don't you just stay in Florida? And they're like, because in Florida, if we do what we do, they put you in jail. That's why we don't do it in Florida. And that's really, I think, something that is meaningful. So he's been really strong on that. But he also has a really great background of service to our country. He was a Green Beret for 23 years in the U.S. Army. and did a lot of deployments. He was in elite special forces. But one of the things that happened was he got injured throughout his service, and he eventually lost one of his legs. And I think he had served for like 18 years at that time. So most people would just take a medical retirement, but he believed in the mission. He believed in doing the job. So he became the first person in the history of the U.S. Army to re-qualify for special forces with a prosthetic leg. And you got to go through the same training that you had to do before. And so it was really remarkable that he was able to do that. And he's got a great military career. But then even taking those skills as a civilian, he is an operations officer, was for a disaster response charity. And so when we have storms, he's down there immediately feeding cops, first responders, displaced residents, very quick, great operational tempo. And then even more recently, when we had Floridians stranded in Israel when the Iran-Israel conflict broke out, we had a lot of people very frantic, wanting their loved ones to get a pathway home, and we just do what we do. I authorized emergency rescues. We were able to get thousands of people out of Israel and to safety, and eventually fly most of them back here to the free state of Florida. And it's great, and I'm proud of doing it, but I just signed the order and kind of gave the direction. Then Senator Collins, he flew to Israel, was on the ground, and was personally rescuing people while the ballistic missiles were raining down. And so that tells you somebody that believes in service to others and service to this country. He's hit the ground running as lieutenant governor, I think like nobody has seen before. And I think people are seeing this is a guy that is he's the real deal. So I'm going to invite our Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins to come up.
Well, good morning. It is great to be here with a lot of friends, people we've known for years, our cattlemen in the back. Good to see you guys, and just appreciate you being here today. This is an incredibly important thing for our community, and frankly, for those of us who like to hunt, fish, do things outside, and, oh yes, exercise our 2A rights. But, when you talk about the things we do, you talk about all those opportunities, you talk about going to Israel, I think the thing that often we don't talk about enough is the courage and the commitment to stand alone if necessary, to stand in that breach and protect our people, to stand on those things that perhaps some of the people out in the media, out in the rest of the world may not like, because we know it's right. And the kind of courage and leadership that Governor DeSantis has shown repeatedly, guys, they don't just sell that at Walmart. You can't just pick it up anywhere. It matters. That's what we're used to in Florida. It's what we love in Florida, and it's why Florida is such an amazing place to raise a family and grow your business. Today's announcement builds on a pretty amazing record of fiscal conservatism, on making a difference for families. Think about what he just talked about: hunting, fishing, your 2A rights. You want to buy a shotgun, a rifle, a pistol, your ammunition. It's expensive, right? We know that. But taking the taxes off the top, man, absolutely incredible. After my family and I moved here, being in the military, we took a lot of things for granted. Some of the places we worked, we could go to the range pretty much any day we wanted. You didn't really realize the impact and the cost of all of that training when you left the military until you had to pay for it out of pocket. We were a little spoiled, right? I'm going to tell you, things like this make such a difference. We have an Olympic athlete today, a skeet shooter here, who is pushed and driven herself into excellence in all that she does. Can you imagine the cost of those training hours and how this can make a difference for her and her family and the people around her? Obviously, we have Chairman Barreto here today, who has led in many ways with FWC. And Layla, I can't forget about you. The most important person in my life and my family is my wife, Layla, who has been there through our thick and thin. When we talk about 2A rights, I did have the opportunity to carry that bill. And while it did not get everything we wanted, guys, it was the first time in the history of our state, and I believe the nation at the time, where we clawed back Second Amendment rights that had been forfeited and given away. Think about that. I am on the record many times. I am pro-God, I am pro-gun, I am pro-life, and I stand unequivocally for those values. It was a privilege and an honor to fight for those, and I stand with the governor on this. Our 2A rights have to be codified. We're going to continue to fight for those, and we should be an open carry state. I think we're on record many times saying that. Hopefully this is the year, but we'll continue to fight for those freedoms and those rights each and every day until we get them all back. So these tax savings, are one thing, and I want to share this website one more time just so people can get that. It is floridarevenue.com/huntfishcamp. It makes a difference, guys. We take it for granted, but go enjoy those times. With America's 250th anniversary coming up, I can't think of a better way to celebrate that than out fishing, hunting, living that Florida dream, that American life, and yes, shoot off some fireworks, do those things, but by God, enjoy the range day. And I just heard Sunday the 9th, right? You know where my family's going to be. We'll be exercising our 2A rights at some range, probably somewhere in Hillsborough County, doing what we do. But guys, aren't you glad to live in a state that values its people, that fights for the things that matter, and prioritizes things that make a difference at your kitchen table, at your dinner table, and for your family? I know I am. God bless each of you. God bless the free state of Florida.
So Rodney is the chairman of the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and they've been instrumental in getting that red snapper. I'm always bugging, come on, let's go, red snapper. We want more, and they've delivered on that. Pythons in the Everglades, huge issue. We've really upped the game, but hopefully we're going to have even more announcements coming ahead on that. And then obviously on these issues to be able to provide these discounts for Floridians over many years, and now this year, really meaningful stuff. So thanks for putting Floridians first and embracing this great culture in Florida.
Thank you, Governor. I got to tell you, I got to thank the governor for his unwavering commitment to the people of Florida. And he has called me numerous times. He says, what can we do to allow more people the opportunity to do more in Florida? Listen, I tell them all the time, I said, people move to Florida because they love the freedoms we have. You imagine that you can be yellowtail fishing down in the Florida Keys and scalloping in Northwest Florida in the same day. It's just amazing the opportunities we have here for the outdoors. The governor has given us all the resources as an agency. He's given us all the tools to protect the environment, open up opportunities. A lot of people don't know that the governor, under his leadership, has bought 374,000 acres, new acres of conservation land for Florida for the future, for our children's children, so that they have an opportunity like we've had this opportunity to be on the outdoors and enjoy it. So I just want to thank you, Governor, for all your support. We do have some exciting news on the python coming up that the governor is going to be announcing soon, and we're excited about that. It's something that we've been working on for quite a while. And Governor, thank you for your leadership.
And so what's our time frame on our Python announcement, do you think? Okay, all right. Well, so that means it's going to be soon. We are going to be down. We did the really historic agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers and the Department of Army to get some of those Everglades projects that the federal government has been in charge of, and delegating that to us. Give us the money, we'll do it. We move very quickly. And that's been a really good partnership. So that's been underway. The projects have been bid, and you're going to see us moving forward on things that probably wouldn't have even broke ground for another 5 to maybe even 10, probably about 5 years. These things just tend to get delayed. So there's a lot going on down there, and I'm proud of all the stuff we've done for Everglades restoration. But these pythons, they just ravage everything. They're not native to there. And there's really no natural predator for it. So the only way to be able to protect the other wildlife there is to just get these things out of there. And there's been different things that have been creative to try to do that. I mean, we do the competition every year. People do go and enjoy doing it. It's not easy. I mean, it's not like they're just easy to find. You got to really do, and it takes a while. But it's important, and so I look forward to making that announcement. Okay. Our great shooter, come on up, Dania.
Governor, I would just really like to thank you for your vision and leadership in providing this Second Amendment sales tax holiday. The shooting sports are a family-oriented activity and something that I learned to love by watching my dad shoot. The exemption of sales tax on these items over the next 4 months will help so many Florida families and hopefully some young aspiring Olympians to participate in the sport that I and we all love so much. So thank you again, Governor.
How did you get involved? Tell them about your background a little bit.
My background?
Well, just how you've, like your career doing this.
I started shooting a little bit late. I was 16 years old. To make a long story short, I grew up as a competitive dancer. I went to the Juilliard School for a semester, thought I would become a ballerina. And then when I was 16, my dad took me to the shooting range, just something that we would do for fun. And there was an Olympic coach there who said, "Did you know this was an Olympic sport? I feel like you would be really good at it." And I said, "This is an Olympic sport?" So I tried the Olympic discipline of shooting, left New York, left Juilliard, and here I am now, making shooting my living. Thank you.
All right, so again, today, September 8th, until the end of the year, December 31st, 2025, these items are tax-free. Firearms, ammunition, accessories, bows, crossbows and accessories, bait and tackle, reels and rods, camping equipment within certain limits on those. But basically, the ammunition is do as much as you want and be able to save. So I'm excited to be able to deliver this. This was something that we had a lot of positive feedback from when I first floated it, however long ago we did that. And so we're like, all right, we got to find a way to get this done. So I'm glad it made it across the finish line, and I hope everybody enjoys. Okay, do we got any questions? Well, I would just say, I've never been in favor of mandates, so let's just be clear on that. Now, there are things that have been in law that are legacy. In Florida, when you talk about schools, we have very generous exemptions. And so I think what you see is a lot of parents use that as it is now. And I also think a lot of people don't realize, there's a lot of countries in Europe, especially UK, Sweden, Norway, Ireland, most of the provinces in Canada here in North America, they have zero mandates. And yet you end up seeing pretty similar results. So I think people are conflating not forcing somebody with somehow not making it available. It'll be available for whoever wants it. But the way certainly our schools work now is parents do have, the ability, to exercise those exemptions. And the reality is this: since COVID and the disaster that the medical establishment inflicted on people and the lies that were told, people have lost confidence in the medical establishment. You have seen an increase in parents who are opting for those exemptions. The Surgeon General believes, and I believe, that if you actually didn't say you've got to take this, otherwise you're going to be punished, I think you'd actually have more uptake on some of those. I think there's some people, they're being told they have to do it, so they're opting for the exemption. But if they were told, hey, here's why you would want to do it, I actually think you'd see more. And that's why in Britain and some of these, they have high uptakes on those because people have trust. But one of the things so I've never been for mandates. But one of the things that I think is really, really frustrating to see how this gets weaponized, first we saw it during COVID. They wanted to say that if you didn't get a COVID mRNA shot and show proof of that you shouldn't be able to go to restaurants, you shouldn't be able to go to sporting events, shouldn't be able to attend college, you shouldn't be able to go K through 12 school without having any data to back that up. And they were even trying to impose mandates on people who had recovered from COVID and had natural immunity. So it was unscientific. It was basically them trying to control. Now, we batted that back in Florida. We banned vaccine passports. We made sure that colleges and universities couldn't mandate, no mandate K-12, no workplace mandates and everything like that. And that saved a lot of people's livelihoods and jobs who were not in a situation where that was something, that they wanted to do. But what happens now, and then the CDC under Biden, they added the COVID mRNA shot to the childhood immunization schedule. The problem with that is that there was not a scientific basis to do that. They're doing it, and and parents have rebelled. The vast, vast majority of parents do not do the COVID shot for that. So it's like, where are they coming up with this? So I think the trust has really been broken. But what really bugs me, because I think the schools, there's exemptions, and so I actually don't think the outcome would be much different at all. But I think on some of these other things where you can be turned away from a doctor's office if your 6-year-old didn't take a hepatitis B shot, that's a sexually transmitted disease. Like, look, sitting in a classroom in kindergarten, I think the chance of contracting Hep B is probably pretty low based on how it's contracted. And so a lot of parents are like, you know, that may not be what we want, but then you're going to be denied to be able to see. They have places, and I don't think it's going on in Florida, but we need protections against this, where they have denied people surgeries because they didn't have a flu shot, or they didn't have COVID jab, or they didn't have Hep B and some of this stuff. And that's really weaponizing this against people, imposing bad consequences on them just because the parent may have made a decision on one of those things. And I think that's, pretty much where people are at. But the conflation of, if you don't force somebody to do something and impose penalties on them, then therefore they're not permitted to do it. No, of course they're permitted to do it. And I saw a lot of stuff over there. The Surgeon General of Florida is taking away vaccine. He never said anything. He never said that there wouldn't be any availability. Obviously, that's not his position. But I think his position is that if you provide information and persuasion, that's better than coercion. And here's the deal. You see a lot of back and forth up in Washington about CDC and everything. We just have to acknowledge that it was a catastrophic failure during COVID. And I'd say our Surgeon General, who feels very strongly about this, in March of 2020, Joe Latipo said we shouldn't do lockdowns. He was pilloried for saying that. Very few people were willing to say that. He said you shouldn't be forcing young school children to wear masks shortly thereafter that. He was pilloried for saying that. He said that schools needed to be open for in-person instruction when Florida did it. He was supportive of that. He was pilloried for that. He said you should not mandate mRNA vaxes on people and let it be their choice. He was pilloried for that. So on all these different things, he was doing what he thought was correct policy and what was in the interest of people, including their individual freedom. And he was pilloried, but yet he was right. He was right on all those. All those things. The lockdowns were harmful. The mask mandates on kids. Now, I overruled those in Florida, but there were school districts that wanted to do it. The forcible mRNA shots, that was wrong. Having kids locked out of school for a year that was wrong. So, you're in a situation where, he's got very strong feelings about coercion ending up being counterproductive when it applies to these medical situations. And I would just say, because when, he asked me, he's like, because he took certain action, there was regulatory mandates that were not in statute like Hep B, and he said, first of all, we don't have the really true authority to be doing that. So he took that away. Even though there's exemptions, he's doing that. And then he's making sure that the exemptions can't be watered down. So that's the actions he actually took. Now, some of the stuff in statute, obviously, that would require additional legislation. But when he told me, he's like, look, I want to say that I don't believe in any of these. Do you mind? I was like, say what you believe, man. Go ahead and do it. But I think one of the things when he told me, he's like, Britain doesn't have any mandates. Sweden doesn't have any mandates. Most of the provinces in Canada don't. Norway, Ireland, all these places. And basically, the results are not dissimilar from the United States in terms of all this. And I think the reason is because parents are provided information. They're not being coerced. They're doing it. And I think when given accurate information, I think they're going to do what's best for their kids. I mean, everyone wants their kids to grow up to be healthy. And I think that's what you see in those countries that don't use coercion and don't use mandates to be able to do it. But those exemptions that he is fortifying in Florida law, are something that a lot of parents currently are opting into. And I think part of that is, I think some people just have views on what they want for their kids. But I do think some of it is a skepticism when they're being told, hey, wait a minute, you told me I had to put a mask on a 2-year-old kid. You told me I had to do this. And so when they're telling you, even if they're right, I think some people are pushing back against it. So it's going to take some time to rebuild trust there. And I think what the Surgeon General's position is the way you build trust is to provide information and use persuasion rather than try to ostracize people from society if they make a different choice. I could. Can someone repeat that? I just couldn't hear enough. Was it about firearm safety? Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So first of all, it's interesting. If you look throughout American history, they used to have shooting classes in a lot of schools. Like, I mean, these kids would be like, ninth grade, and they're out doing this. It was really part of American culture. You actually, I mean, I remember the late Justice Antonin Scalia saying, he gave a talk that he used to have a rifle in New York City that he would bring to school, back in the day. And so the culture in somewhat has shifted in some respects on it. But in terms of safety, you have constitutionally protected rights, and the Second Amendment is one. But with rights come responsibility, and you have responsibility to be able to handle those firearms and exercise your rights in other ways apart from Second Amendment in a responsible way. And if you're impinging on other people, if you're out there at a shooting range and you have some AD or something like that, then you're going to be held accountable for that. So someone like Jay Collins, I mean, he's been through every type of firearms training you could ever have at Fort Bragg and his elite special forces. Not everyone gets to go through that, but I think most people, the one thing I like about Florida, there's so many opportunities to be able to go to a class and to learn how to handle these firearms. And that's true for pistols. It's true for rifles. It really doesn't matter across the board. So I would encourage people, make sure you know what you're doing. You have a right, but you also have a responsibility to do it in an appropriate way. And if people are not able to exercise their rights in an appropriate way, you absolutely can be held accountable for that. And part of it in Florida is, this stuff can be done if you're not 18 under supervision of an adult, of course. But if you're school-age kid, you don't have access to that on your own, absent parent supervision, and that's always been the law. Now, I also think they, before I became governor, the legislature extinguished the right of 18 to 21-year-olds to be able to purchase long guns, and that's just something that I don't think was consistent with the state or federal Constitution. To do a blanket prohibition on a constitutionally enumerated right, that's never been something that has really passed muster. I know that's being litigated now all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, but I was against it at the time and said so publicly as a candidate, and then now I've continued to take that position as governor. Well, look, the Surgeon General said, his position is he's going to work to do that. He recognizes his authority is important, and he's exercising it, but it's limited. It's not unlimited authority. And so as he goes and meets with legislatures, all these agencies propose bills every year, and they can do. Now, I would also say this. Apart from, the overall mandates, which I think as people learn more about it, will understand that what the Surgeon General was saying was pretty consistent with what many countries are doing. And then if you look in practice with Florida having our exemptions the way we do, and a lot of parents opting for that I think likely you would see very, very similar outcomes, even in the absence of the current regime. And I actually think you'd see higher in some respects, because I think people would say, you know what, you're trusting me. Yeah, I'm going to listen. I think people have a more open mind on some of it. But we asked the legislature, all the stuff I talked about preventing people from losing their jobs or vaccine passports or all of that. We did that in 2021. Very important. The legislature sunsetted that. And so it was going to be sunset this year. So we said, hey, let's make it permanent. They didn't make it permanent. They just extended it. That's got to be made permanent. I mean, that to me is, everyone is glad that we did that. I mean, even the very far left, I don't hear them, at least publicly, they won't admit they're for vaccine passports. It doesn't make sense. So they need to do that. The other thing is addressing some of these issues of discrimination. I get, like, on some levels, if someone comes for medical care and you're just in private practice, I don't know that you're under any obligation to necessarily see everybody. I mean, you'd have to talk to doctors about that. I get there's a business component to this, but to say that a mom can't get her daughter in to see a pediatrician because while they did MMR and all the standard vaccines, they didn't do maybe Hep B or they didn't do COVID or some of those, to me, that's discrimination. I mean, that is limiting people's freedom to be able to do what they think is right for their kids by having these restrictions. And basically, it's a follow-on from mandates. And if you look at the CDC schedule compared to what it was when I was growing up to now, I mean, it's a lot of shots for these kids. And some parents, while I think 90+% would do the core, some of the other ones, particularly the new ones, some parents may choose not to. Maybe there's an individual reason. I would much rather let people make those decisions than to say, oh no, you're barred from seeing pretty much any physician going forward. And certainly, if somebody needs medical care and they need a transplant or something, to say that you're not going to be able to get that because you didn't do this shot or that shot, that is not what we want to do. So that is weaponized against people. And what we tried to do in this most recent session was really focus on the non-discrimination. The legislature did not go for that. And I think that, there is some currents in the legislature on both sides of the aisle. I mean, I think the Dems are very, very much, believe in the coercion. But I do think you have some Republicans who their view is that, people should face negative consequences for making different choices in that regard. And I think when you see those examples, you just kind of scratch your head and it's like, guys, you're losing the plot here to allow that. So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of developed since then that I think is problematic. So make the stuff permanent that we've done. I think that's really important. We're going to take another whack at the non-discrimination as well. And then I know the Surgeon General feels strongly about any mandates for there. And like I said, I've always been against mandates, but I focused on the non-discrimination because I thought that was the easiest thing that we could do last session. And we got, I think a lot of members support non-discrimination, but I think some others, just have different views on it. And just as a dad, we want to make sure that the parents are able to be in the best position they can to do what they need for their kids. And if their kid needs a surgery or something, to be able to say you're going to be rejected. Remember, they were, and we fought back against this in Florida, but there was a long time in this country during COVID where people were being rejected for medical care in different parts of the country because of the COVID jab, because of not taking the COVID jab, including people who were naturally immune because they had a prior infection. And this is why I think a lot of people get frustrated because, like California, for example, this is during COVID. Medical professionals were being, in California, forced to take COVID shots. Now, there were some that didn't do it. I don't know if they got fined or maybe they had an exemption or whatever. So you had nurses, and they had a big COVID wave. So the hospitals are starting to fill up. And then some nurses get COVID, and so they have to go on the sidelines. The unvaccinated nurses were sent home, and they were not allowed to help deal with the COVID wave. And they actually, because they were shorthanded, brought back nurses who were COVID, who had the vax, but had COVID. They're bringing them back. And I'm just thinking to myself, how nuts is this that they're doing it? A lot of the nurses that didn't take the MNRA already got infected by COVID. And so for them, it's like, they have protection through natural immunity. So it's almost like this has become something that's very political in nature, because if somebody has had a prior infection, it's like when we were kids, like they wanted you to get chicken pox, right? You get it, you get out of the way, and you have natural immunity, lifetime immunity. Well, if you have immunity from that, would you now turn around and take the varicella? I don't think you would do that if you're already naturally immune. But yet that's what they were saying to do. So there's just a lot of things, I think, that people scratch their head with. But ultimately, we know from looking at the experience of other countries that you can have very robust availability and, yes, even uptake on those core vaxes that have been around for a long time without coercing people and without imposing mandates. And that's very clear. And I don't think many people know that. Honestly, I was a little surprised to see that when the Surgeon General told me that. But this is kind of like, remember during COVID, Sweden was open, a lot of Europe was closed. Everyone said Sweden was going to be such a disaster. Oh, it's so bad. They ended up having the lowest excess mortality of any country in Europe during the course of the pandemic. And so, you know, you have these A/B tests and you can kind of see how things shake out. What service were you? Okay. And you live here in Hillsborough County? Okay. Yeah, yeah, I know it well. No, so yeah, it's a good question. So okay, well, thank you for that. And look, first, the federal VA is a massive bureaucracy, and you're not the first veteran to get caught up in that. I've met many over the years, and it's been very, very difficult for a lot of people I know. In terms of your personal situation, I've got staff right there. Provide your information. We want to be able to help and do what we can to help you. How the Tristan Murphy Act, I mean, look, I think a lot of this is going to be driven by guidance from the Florida Attorney General's office in conjunction with the local law enforcement and state attorneys. But we want to be helpful. Look, we pride ourselves on being strong for veterans in Florida. There's some difficult issues that come down the pike. There's just no question about it. The VA bureaucracy is very impersonal. It's very distant, and it's very cumbersome. And well, yeah, look, I mean, I think I know because I've talked to the new secretary and Doug Cotton. He's very much attentive to the problems that we've seen. And it wasn't just under Biden. This has been happening for 10, 20 years. And so I do think, and they have indicated, the VA, that they want to work with Florida to maybe adopt a little bit different model. You know, I believe, like, if you need help, you go into the VA. The VA ain't the end-all, be-all. We've got all these great organizations in Florida that focus on mental health for veterans, focus on providing service dogs, focus on economic mobility. There's so many people in this state. You have a reservoir of groups that want to be helpful for veterans. So we're working on the model that was pioneered by my wife with Hope Florida. Let's use the VA working in conjunction with all of our groups to link the veterans with all these additional resources. And I just remember, like, when I was leaving the military, they give you like a packet about, hey, here's for vet. And I'm just thinking to myself, I'm looking at this, I didn't understand it. I mean, I was like, this is bureaucracy. And it was really problematic. So there's a lot to be done. Well, I don't know about that. I think you could do. Well, that's a discussion for another day. But, you know, they actually just put out a, someone like put out these song lists, and they attributed one to me. It just wasn't. I mean, there was some good stuff on there. You know, they had Johnny Cash, they had everything like that, and so people are like, well, why don't you put out your list? So we are going to put out the list. So stay tuned on that. Thanks, everybody.